we go. Welcome everyone to today's session. SEAMWARE, with the support of FIWARE Foundation and the collaboration of Gaia-X Spain, is organizing this 3-day training on FIWARE technologies for data spaces. And during this series, starting with the FIWARE vision and architecture for trusted data services transactions, we will progressively dive into the FIWARE Data Space Components and the FIWARE Data Space Connector, exploring how they enable the creation of interoperable, secure, and business-ready data spaces. So through practical demos and interactive sessions, you will gain firsthand experience with FIWARE technologies and their unique value proposition. So I will now hand over to our speaker for today, our presenter, which is Francisco de la Vega.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. In this second session, we are going to go deep into the FIWARE Data Space Connector technologies. In yesterday's session, you were told how deploy the FIWARE Data Space Connector, as well as all the different concepts regarding identity management and access control on top of that. So today we are going to extend this a little bit with the marketplace features, which basically allows you to create offers that includes this configuration information about policies, credentials, etc. So all these access control mechanisms are automatically procured when the different customers that you have in your system actually buy or acquire the access of a different set of offers that allows to access to the different services secured within the FIWARE Data Space Connector. I'm going to, let me share the screen. Here. Okay. And let me see. Okay. So I'm going to start with a little bit of slides. This is the agenda we are going to follow with this presentation. First of all, we are going to review which are the TM Forum Open APIs, which is the standard we use as part of the FIWARE Data Space Connector for everything that is related with catalog, service acquisition, procurement, etc. Once we have a look at which are these TM Forum APIs, we are going to see how to manage users, organizations, and how to publish an offer and acquire that offer using directly these TM Forum Open APIs. Then we are going to review one particular FIWARE component, which is the FIWARE Buy Marketplace, that uses these TM Forum APIs, but gives you a little bit more control on top of them, including a graphical interface, the management of the processes, etc. And finally, we are going to see how all this stuff can be integrated within the FIWARE Data Space Connector in order to offer services that are, well, secure in a FIWARE Data Space Connector. Okay, let's start. First of all, what are the TM Forum Open APIs? Okay, the TM Forum Open APIs is a standard set of APIs that has been defined by a TM Forum organization. The idea of these APIs is that they enable seamless connectivity as well as interoperability across different ecosystem of services. The TM Forum APIs in general are just REST APIs, so they are technology agnostic and can be used in any digital scenario. The different TM Forum APIs are not focused on a particular use case, but they try to solve the general problem of service catalog, service procurement, and service monetization. The objective of the TM Forum API is enabling the different services that the different providers have to be managed end-to-end. That means since the service conception, the service publication, service acquisition, service procurement, the whole life cycle. And a very important point is that they are intended for those environments where we are going to have multiple partners involved, multiple parties that are involved in the service delivery chain, as could be a data space scenario. Just to let you know, there are around 100 APIs covering different aspects of digital service management, but we are not, of course, using all of them. We are using a subset of these APIs that are enough for providing the functionality that we need. Okay, these specifications are totally open, so you can find the specification of the different APIs directly in the TM Forum Open directory, which is basically this link that we have here. And there you can search for all the different APIs and you can download a couple of things. You can download a PDF document, which is just the specification of the API, which all the documentation that you need. There is also Swagger documents that you can use in order to import into your systems or have it documented in the typical Open API format. As well as other resources like simple reference implementations, etc. As part of FIWARE, we are providing a reference implementation of a subset of what we call the core APIs, which is in the FIWARE GitHub. And this is the implementation that we use in our projects, and this is the implementation that is also part of the FIWARE Data Space Connector. Okay, but how the TM Forum APIs actually looks like. The TM Forum APIs, as we said, are REST API, and the format of the body or the format of the entities is JSON-LD. As JSON-LD, all the TM Forum APIs are going to share a couple of properties, including the ID, which will be the ID of the entity, the add type, which basically is identifying the type of the entity you are handling. You are going to have also as well an href. Typically is a link that, well, you can use in order to get the entity itself. And then we have two extra attributes, which are typically used in order to generate some kind of inheritance in the APIs, which are the base type and the schema location. This is typically used in order to extend the entities. If you have an entity which is representing, I don't know, service, and you need something more particular than general service, and you need, I don't know, software service, for example, it is actually possible to set the base type as the parent type, the type as the new child class you are creating, and then provide in the schema location the URL, and needs to be a working URL of a JSON schema associated to the new type you are creating. This way you are able to extend and add new attributes to the different TM Forum entities in order to create whatever child classes you need. This is very useful because this is basically allowing you to add anything that is not already covered by the TM Forum itself. In addition to these attributes, we have, the TM Forum APIs typically has a version, which is the particular version of the entity. And well, if you are making breaking changes over an entity, typically you need to update the version. They will have a last updated field, which is the date and time the entity was updated. And there is typically also a valid for attribute, which is defining a time period, which is the period a given entity is valid, with a start date time and an end date time. Well, as I mentioned before, the TM Forum APIs are REST API, so they are managed through the typical HTTP methods. You will use a post to create the entities, a get to query entities, a patch to modify entities, and a delete to remove entities. When you are working with get and you are making queries, the TM Forum API is defining a simple query language that can be used in order to filter the results. This is quite simple. The only thing you need to do is to use the actual attribute and then the values that you want, as you can see here. So you can use the attribute directly to query. For example, here, we are making a GET request to read individuals, and I want all individuals whose given name is Francisco. So I'm making this query. There are as well some attributes in the TM Forum API, which are actually objects or arrays. In those scenarios, you are able to query those by linking with the dot, similar to what it is done, for example, in MongoDB. So if I want to get all the catalogs whose related party ID is this one, I can make this query. Related party is an object who has multiple fields. It has the ID, it has the href, it may have a role, a couple of things. So if you need to link this, you can just use dots in order to go deep into the different objects when querying. You need to take into account that if you provide different query params to the query, this is going to work as an AND query. So both of them need to be satisfied at the same time in the same entity. But if you provide multiple values for a particular attribute, for example, here it may be given name Francisco, comma, Alejandro, then this will work as an OR. So it will give you all the entities of Francisco and all the entities of Alejandro. In addition to this, you can actually filter a little bit the results that you are going to get. If you are, for example, querying catalogs, as you are not interested in all the information, maybe you are creating an interface or something like that, so you only need the name and the description, you can filter using the fields attribute, the field query string. If you put this in the query, only these attributes here, plus the ID, plus the type, are going to be returned when making the query. Okay, in addition to this basic query mechanism, the TM Forum API is defining actually a notification endpoint. So you can subscribe to different events in the TM Forum API, and you are going to be notified by the TM Forum API every time these different events happen. You can subscribe to 4 different types of events, which are the create event, trigger when an object is created, the attribute value change event, which is triggered when one of the attributes of the object is updated, the state change event, which is triggered when the particular when the particular attribute that defines the status of the entity is changed, or the delete event that is triggered when an entity is removed. The process to subscribe to this is quite straightforward. All the TM Forum APIs are defined in this endpoint, which is the API hub, where with a post request, you can register a callback. Here in the callback, you are going to put an HTTP URL where your listener should be listening, taking into account that you need also to put the path and this kind of stuff. This should be an absolute URL. So every time an event happens, the particular TM Forum API is going to send back a post request to this URL with this entity here, with this object, which basically includes the ID of the event, the timestamp where the event has been triggered, and the type of event, which you can see in this case is individual create event. You can see that when we were speaking about these events, they are type of events. The particular event type is going to depend on the type of the entity that's triggered it. For example, in this case, an individual has been created, so we have an individual create event type. And then you are going to have the attribute event, which is basically having the object, the whole object that has been created, modified, or removed. So you get this information and you can work with it every time something is modified. Okay, as I mentioned before, the TM Forum APIs are not intended for a particular use case, but they are giving us a general approach to use them in different scenarios. In the real world, that typically means that the different entities, the different attributes defined by the TM Forum entities are not always complete, or they typically miss or may miss some attributes or some information that are specific to the use case you are working with. It's not the same working with, I don't know, a cloud environment where your products are actually services that are going to be deployed like SaaS or platform as a service or these kind of things, that working in a real world scenario where you are selling, I don't know, telephones, physical telephones, for example. They are totally different. So in order to be able to use the APIs in all these scenarios, they define 2 different approaches for providing extra information on top of the attributes that are already defined, which are the most classical way and the new, more JSON-LD base, as we have discussed before. The characteristics base, which is the most simple one, basically, most of the entities of the TM Forum includes an attribute which is called characteristics. And this is very straightforward. When you have the characteristic, you can provide two values, which is the name of the characteristic and the value of the characteristic. This way, this works like a sandbox, so you can put anything you need as part of the entity. For example, we may have the organization entity, and we want to put the LinkedIn link of the particular organization. There is not a LinkedIn attribute in the organization, so you will create a characteristic whose name is going to be LinkedIn URL and the value is going to be the proper LinkedIn URL. So this way you are able to put any information you want as part of the entities. As you will see later when we are talking about the particular case of the FIWARE Dataspace Connector, you will see that the characteristics are extremely important because it's where you are going to put things like, for example, the configuration information of the Dataspace Connector, as we are going to see later. And then we have another way of extending this, which is the one that I have already introduced, which is the one based on JSON LD. So basically, you are able to extend a model, creating a child class of the model using the type, the base type, and the schema location. So basically, you are going to set the type of the model to whatever you have defined. The base type is going to be the parent of the entity, and then you are going to add a schema location that will be pointing to a valid JSON schema defining just the new fields. With this, the implementation of the TM4 API is going to accept your entity, and you will have a child class with all the new attributes you need in your particular scenario. Okay. This that we have here is the entity model that we are managing as part of FIWARE. As I said before, there are 100 APIs, and this may be huge if you start integrating other APIs. But this is what we are actually integrating in FIWARE. It may look a little bit complex, but it is not. Let's review the kind of things that we have here. First of all, if you have a look here, we have the concept of specifications, which is how you are going to register your different type of products that can then be sold. Here in the specification, we have, first of all, service specifications. The service specifications are the different, define the type of services or the service class that you are offering. Basically, I don't know, a query to a contest blocker, a data set, an application, all these kind of things are going to be service specifications. Then you have as well resource specifications. The resource specifications are those resources that you need to instantiate or have in place in order to be able to serve these service specifications. For example, imagine that you have a service specification which is defining we are in FIWARE, this is defining a context blocker. But it's not already deployed context blocker. It's a context blocker that is going to be deployed just for the different customers. You may define as a resource specification a virtual machine that is the one that is going to be created in order to store this service specification. These resources could be any digital or physical stuff that is needed to serve this. For example, in this same example I'm talking about, this context blocker, this service specification being a context blocker. If during the procurement phase, when this is purchased, instead of being a virtual machine, you plan to deploy this into a Kubernetes environment, the resource specification may be a Helm chart that you can use in order to deploy this context blocker. You see, here you have all your services, and here you have the different things that you need to make those services run. The combination of the resource specification plus the service specifications are making the product specification. The product specification defines that your product, what is being offered to the third parties in order to be purchased. This product specification typically includes, as part of the characteristics, as I was describing before, the different configuration options, the different things that the customer can select and that typically has an impact on the pricing when badging this particular product specification. The product specifications are included in what are called product offerings. The product offering includes, if the product specification includes the, let's say, the technical part, the product offering includes the business part. As part of the product offering, you are going to have the price plans, you are going to have the service level agreements, you are going to have the terms and conditions, all the kind of information is part of the product offering. These product offerings can be offered through catalogs, so you can be able to group the product offerings and discover them looking them by off-order offers that are similar and these kind of things. Okay, when you want to buy a product offering, what the customer is going to do is to create a product order. And in the product order, you are going to have all the different options that has been selected by the customer. For example, all the configuration options that are part of the product specification, the selection of the particular value will be part of the product order. Or if the product offering has multiple pricing plans, the price plan that has been selected by the customer is also information that is part of the product order. The product order is what the provider is going to process in order to procure the services, instantiate the resources, instantiate the services, and process everything that needs to be processed so the customer has actual access to whatever he has bought. When this process finishes, what is going to be created are these objects here: the product, the resource, and the service, which are the particular instances that has been created for the user. For example, if in our example where we have a service specification defining a contest broker, the service will be the particular instance of the contest broker that has been deployed for that particular user, the real one. The resources will be the real instances that has been procured, the real virtual machine, the real disk, the real RAM, the real resource running in Kubernetes, okay? The particular instances. And the product represents the instance of all this stuff that has been created for the particular customer. Okay, I know that this may be confusing at the beginning, but if we saw this with a particular example of the real world, we may be able to understand better the concept of product specification, offering, order, and product. Okay, imagine that instead of having digital services, we are going to buy or we are going to sell a real product. For example, we are going to sell an iPhone. The product specification will be, I don't know, iPhone 16. And the different configuration options for the iPhone 16 are how many disks it has. It could be 128, 266. Those are two values of our configuration option. There may be different colors. It could be black, white, red. That is also a configuration option that is part of the product specification, etc. Then we are going to have the product offering on this product. We are going to have one price plan which specifies how much money we have to pay for the iPhone. And the pricing is going to depend on the configuration option. There will be a different price if the user decides that he wants 128 gigabytes, or if the customer decides they want a 256 gigabytes. They will have different pricing. That pricing information is defined as part of the product offering. Then, when a customer wants to buy this iPhone, they are going to put a product order. And in the product order, the customer is going to put what he wants as part of the configuration option. He's going to specify, hey, I want the iPhone 16, I want it in white color, and I want it to be 256 gigabytes. That information is what is put as part of the product order. Then the store is going to process my order and it's going to send me a real iPhone. The real iPhone I get, the one that I had in my hand, is the one that is represented by the product object. Is my iPhone with my email, with my configuration, white plus 256 gigabytes of RAM. Okay? So that's what these 4 objects here are representing. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper on the different entities that we are managing in the TM Forum API. First of all, we need to be able to manage users and we need to be able to manage organizations. And both individuals and organizations in the TM Forum API are managed as parties. The parties are handled by the TM Forum Party Management API, which basically defines these 2 different objects. First, an individual is a human in general, could be customers, could be employees, could be anyone that the organization needs to store information about them. And well, for an individual entity, typically you have the name, the family name, you will have a list of contact mediums that could be emails, phone number, addresses, all this kind of stuff. You may have an external reference, which is the identification of the individual in other systems. Like if you have an identity management system, for example, this external reference may be linking to that information. If you want to store other kind of information of the individual, you will have the party characteristics. As I mentioned before, the characteristics are used to put any information that is not directly handled by the default entity. So here is where you are going to put whatever is the stuff you need to know about the individual or about the person that is relevant for your use case and that is not directly covered by the TM Forum API. On the other hand, we have organizations, and they are very relevant when you are working with FIWARE environments because we only work with organizations, which are basically a group of people, just that. That could be a department, an enterprise, it could be any kind of organization, okay? Typically, as part of an organization, you are going to have, again, the trading name, which is the name of the organization, whether this is a legal entity or not, the type of organization, if this is a company, if this is a department, if this is a university or whatever. And then you are going to have, again, the contact mediums, which are, well, as I mentioned, telephone numbers, email addresses, etc. And again, you are going to have the party characteristics, which are, as I mentioned, you can put here whatever information you need in your use case in order to be able to manage the organization info. Okay, and then for both of them, the individuals and the organization, you may have accounts. And the different accounts are managed through the TM Forum Account Management API. And here, the one that we are using in our system is the billing account, which is basically an account that is used for billing purposes. What kind of information you are going to have here? You are going to have the name of the account, the type of the account. Here you are going to have, for example, the billing address is also part of the billing account. And then you are going to have the contact, which is the link to the particular party that is the owner of this billing account, which might be, as I mentioned, individuals or might be organizations. When these individuals or organizations are badging something through the TM Forum API, they'll need to provide a billing account because it's a field of the product order. Okay, now that we have our organizations, we have our individuals, and we have our billing accounts, now we are able to start publishing a product offering. And here you will see that there are several entities and several objects that will need to be taken into account. First of all, the different catalog elements, which means the catalog, the product specification, product offering, as we have seen before, are managed through the TM Forum Catalog Management API. And they define a life cycle for catalog elements that you need to take into account when working with this system. This is the life cycle that we have. This starts with 3 statuses, which is the in study, in design, and in test, which are intended for the development phases, when you are working on your service, you are deciding if you are going to create something, you are in a study. If you are designing it, you are working on it, you are in design. And if this is approved, you are in test. Okay. But these three initial statuses, we are not working with them in FIWARE. Our first status is the active status because we have decided not to support the design life cycle because it doesn't make sense for the particular use cases we are managing. So the first status we handle is the active status, which means that the element is there, but it is not ready for monetization. So it cannot be discovered and cannot be purchased. When the particular element is ready to be acquired by potential customers, the lifecycle status changes to launched. When it's in launched state, it can be discovered, it can be purchased. When we decide that we don't want our product to be acquired anymore, we can change the status to retired. In retired status, the element is no longer being able to be discovered, no longer to be purchased, but all those customers that has already acquired the product can still use it. They still have them in their inventories and they still can make queries or whatever they have acquired. When we decide to totally deprecate the different services and the different products, we change the status to obsolete. In obsolete status, the different customers who purchased this can no longer access. We have totally removed the service from our catalogs. Okay, with this in mind, the first thing that we need to start to create are catalogs and categories. A category, a product category, is basically an object that is used in order to group the product offering, so you can then use the category filter in order to search for the different offers, etc. The product categories can contain other categories because they are defined like a tree. You have a root category. For example, you may have a root category called data, and then you may have children categories like NGSI data, historic data, real-time data, or whatever. And you may have multiple levels in these different category trees. The product categories are directly linked to the different product offerings. And as part of a product category, you typically define the name of the category, a description that specifies, well, what this category means, then whether this category is a root or not, and if it is not a root, which category parent is the parent of the current category. So you can actually build the real category tree. One important point is that typically in the different environments, the categories are provided by the marketplace instance itself and are typically created by the system administrator, because the categories are the filters or the typical filters that are shown in the search page of the different marketplaces. On the other hand, we have the catalogs. The catalogs are also a way to group offers. They define this as product offerings that belong to the same distribution channel or the same market segment, but okay, they are just a way of allowing you to group the different product offerings. And the main difference, you can see that the catalog includes as well the name, the description, the parties that belong here, and then you can even add a list of categories to the catalog, because you can link a catalog to a particular category tree. And what that happens, if you add any of the categories to an offer that are registered here, the offer automatically belongs to this catalog. Okay, this is the way to structure this. But the important point is that the catalogs are created by the service providers. The categories are created by the system, and the catalogs are created by the providers. So if you need a different way of classifying your offerings that is different from whatever classification has been defined in the different category trees, well, you can create a catalog and add your offers to this particular catalog. Okay, so you will have the two objects that are needed in order to be able to group and filter the offers. So now we can start creating our product. The first thing that we need to do is to create our specifications. For example, our service specifications. Our service specification, as I mentioned, describes a type of service, and it works like a template that is going to be used later in order to instantiate the real services when you buy something. A service specification, as you can see, don't have a lot of information. They just have name, description, and then they have the spec characteristics. In the specification characteristics, which is a list of characteristics that we have seen before, is where you are going to put any relevant information that you need in your systems. For example, I don't know, if we are offering a query to the context broker, you are going to put a spec characteristic, which is the entity type, which is the link, if it's our working context broker, which is the URL of the context broker, all these kind of things that you will need during the procurement phase. And the resource specifications are similar. The resource specification will include all the physical, non-physical component that you need in order to be able to offer the service. And you have something similar. You have the name description for the resource specification, and then you will have a resource spec characteristic where you are going to put any information you will need later for the procurement and the instantiation. For example, if you are defining a virtual machine resource specification, in the characteristics, you are going to include the type of virtual machine, the possibilities for the RAM, the possibilities for the disk, all this kind of stuff will be characteristics. Okay, and once we have our services and our resources specification created, we need to put them together within a product specification, which is the description that will characterize the product when the product offering is purchased. And for this, the main information is the name and the description again. And then we have product specification characteristics. And these product specification characteristics is very, very important, because in the product specification characteristics is where you are going to define the configuration options the different customers can select. In our example with the iPhone, the color and the disk are two different specification characteristics with multiple values that are defined in this particular field. Not only that, but the product specification characteristics can be linked, as we are going to see later, from the price plans. So you may have different values or different prices depending on what values of the product spec characteristic are selected. In the example of the iPhone, if you select the option with 256 GB, the price will be higher because it's more expensive. Okay, and this is a direct link that we are going to see later. And then, of course, the product specification includes the links to the different resource specifications and the links to the different service specifications. So, well, this is a simple diagram on how this will work in a marketplace. You are going to create first the resources, which are created in the resource catalog API. Then you are going to create the services, which are created in the service catalog API. And finally, you are creating the product specification, which is created in the product catalog API, linking the resources and the services. Well, now that we have our products, we need to start to creating our offer. And the first thing that we need to create are the different price plans, which in the TM Forum API are different entities, so we can reuse the price plan in multiple offers. In order to do that, we are going to create a set of entities of type product offering price, which is refined into a particular pricing model. Here, I need to give you some extra details because what we are going to do in order to create a price plan is to create a combination of multiple product offering prices. How is this done? Okay. We are going to see two different types of prices when you are creating this. On the one hand, we have what we call price components, and then we have what we call price plan. A price plan is made of multiple price components. So each price component is defining a simple pricing. It's defining, for example, a one-time payment, a recurring fee that could be paid, I don't know, monthly, per year, per quarter, or whatever. And it's also maybe defining a pay-per-use pricing. For example, the price per hour of RAM or the price per hour of CPU or this kind of things. These small prices. Then it is also possible to add discounts and fees also by creating extra product offering prices. And if you put all these price components together, linked into the price plan, you create the price plan. So you will have a global product offering price which has links to all the different price components. The combination of all of them create the price plan. What is important here is that each of these price components may be linked to a particular value of a product specification characteristics. For example, if we go back to the iPhone example, we will have a price plan which has two price components. It has one price component of one-time payment, which is linked to the size characteristic and to the value 128. And will be, for example, $1,000, for example, just to give you an example, 1,000 euros. And then we have a second price component, which is linked to the value 256, which is 1,500 euros. When the user selects what he wants and we process the product order, we only apply the price component who matches the value we have selected. So we have two price components, but only one of them is applied, the one that matches. If we have selected 128, we select the 1,000, and if we select 256, we select the 1,500. Okay, so with this combination of price component that may or may not be linked to values of the product specification characteristics, you can create complex price plans. Okay, well, here we have the particular attributes that are used when we want to create our plan. So if we have our product offering price, which is the plan, this bundle is going to be true, and in the bundle pop relationships, we are going to have the links to all the product offering prices, while if we are creating a price component, is bundle going to be false, you are going to have the price type, which is recurring one-time usage, we will have the price, and then you will have the product specification char value use, which is the attribute that is used to link to the particular values of the product characteristics. Okay, now we have our plan. So the last step is publish our product offer, which means that we have to create this particular entity. And this particular entity is going to have, again, a name and a description. It's going to have a category attribute with all the categories that we have selected for our product offering. And then it's going to include the link to the product specification and the link to the product offering prices that represent price plans. And with that, you have all the information that you need as part of the product offering in order to be able to process it when it is purchased. So in order to publish this, we create the product spec, we create the product offering prices, and then we create the product offering with all the information. Everything is done through the product catalog API, the same API where we registered the product specification before. Okay, now we have our offer with all the information that we need. So now as a customer, we need to be able to buy this product offering. And this is done using another entity, which is the product order. The product orders are also defining a particular life cycle that we are supporting in FIWARE, which is this one that we have here. The product orders are initially created without a status, and depending whether the provider accepts or not to process the product order, you may land into different lifecycle status. If we accept to process this order, we have the order acknowledged, and if we reject the order, it is rejected, and this is a final state. If we are in acknowledged, we can start processing the product order, I don't know, calling the payment gateway, instantiating the services, etc. So during that, we are in progress status. And when our order is processed, we may end in 3 different end final lifecycle statuses. If, why we have 3 final statuses? Because a product order can be used to buy multiple offers at the same time. You may buy 1, but you may buy 20 at the same time. So if all the order items or all the offers that you have included in the product order has been properly completed, the final status is completed. If all the product orders has failed, then the final status is failed. And if some of the order items has been properly processed and some of the order items has not, the final status will be partial. Okay, so in order to create a product order, we are going to use the product order management API. And as part of the product order, we are going to include all our selections as customers. So basically, we are going to add the product offer, which is a link to the product offer we want to buy. We are going to use the item total price in order to link which product offering price we have selected. Which at the beginning we said there might be multiple price plans. We can select which is the one that is better for us. So we select them by adding a link in this attribute. Then we are going to use the product characteristic attribute to select which values of the characteristics of the product we are selecting. In this case, if you have the color characteristic, we have 3 possible values. Here you are going to have 1 single value, which is the color that you have selected or the disk that you have selected. Then you have to link your billing account, and then you are putting the related parties, which typically are going to involve 2 different parties. One which will be the customer, that's it, you, and one which is going to be the seller, which is the owner of the product offering. And this is all the information that you need to put. So now we can start procuring our product order, which means that we create a product order and we send the product order to the marketplace. The marketplace is going to create the product order in the product ordering API without a status yet. So then we need to acknowledge it. And when we start the process, we have to change the status to in progress and start doing stuff. So while this is in progress, we can download, for example, the payment information from the product catalog API. So we can start the payment of the particular offer. So this is something that is typically processed through a payment gateway. So, for example, could be Stripe, PayPal, Redsys, whatever. And the payment systems typically, when this is the first time, that is the time when you order, typically they require some interactive interactions that need to be done with the payment system. So they typically show or give a redirection URL that then whatever marketplace system we are using needs to redirect the user, because the user needs to confirm the payment in the payment system. Okay, let me interrupt the product order now because we are in the middle of the process of the product order, but now we need to do something else. We have processed the payment, but after processing the payment, we need to procure the services before the order is completed, meaning that we have to create the services, we have to create the resources, and then we have to register that everything is ready by creating the product in the product inventory API. And this is what we have here. The product inventory management API is the one that is used in order to handle the product instances. And it has this particular lifecycle status. When you create something in the product, it's created in created state, meaning that, okay, we are procuring the stuff, but the particular customer does not have access yet to the services and the resources that made this product. When everything has been properly created and the customer actually has access to the different services, the lifecycle status is changed to active. If for whatever reason, for example, the customer is not paying, if you have a recurring payment and the customer decides not to pay, you can change the status to suspended, meaning that the customer has not access to the service during a temporal time, during some time, because, well, maybe they have not paid, so they are in suspended state until they pay, and then they go back to the active status. So this is allowing us to suspend the service from a time, and if the service is fully terminated, maybe because the customer cancels the service and they decide that they don't want to have it anymore, the final status is terminated, which means that the product and all these related services and resources has been removed. And well, we are going to have three different types of instances in the inventory. We are going to have the instances of the services, the instances of the resources, and the instances of the product, which is linking the services and the resources. So if we continue with our process, we have received the payment confirmation. So now that we know that we have received the payment confirmation, we are starting with the procurement process, which typically means, okay, I'm going to create the resources in the resource inventory API. I'm going to create the services in the service inventory API. And I'm going to create the product in created state in the product inventory API. And now we start. Sorry. Okay, that we need to start the provisioning service. So we are going to call whatever provisioning services the provider has. At the end of the day, the TM Forum APIs are an information model, but the TM Forum API does not have the software to make the real procurement. If you need to create a virtual machine, you need to create a virtual machine. If you need to grant some role to the user, you need to grant some role to the user. If you need to create some policy, you need to create that particular policy. So you need a provisioning service. In the particular case of the FIWARE Dataspace Connector, the FIWARE Dataspace Connector came with a provisioning service, which is called the contract management module, as we are going to see later. The point is that after this call, all the services are running, the resources are deployed, so we update the status of the resources, we update the status of the services, and we update the status of the product in the inventory, and we set it in active state. Now that everything is running, we update the order status to complete it. So now the services are procured, the customer has access to them, so the product order is completed. Okay. With this, we have reviewed the TM Forum API concept, which is the basic information model and the basic information we are using. But in addition to this, in FIWARE, we have a particular component, which is called the FIWARE by Marketplace. This component, which is intended to support the creation of different types of digital marketplaces, is already integrated with the TM Forum APIs. So this component is actually making all the requests, all these requests that we have seen that will need to be done through the TM Forum APIs is actually managed by this Business API Ecosystem Generic Enabler. And the idea of this component is that it's intended to handle the life cycle of the different product offerings. It allows you to create the products, to monetize them, do the billing, it's calling the payment gateways, and it's basically doing all this stuff for you, so you don't need to think on these flows and interact directly with the TM Forum APIs. The idea for the Business API ecosystem is that this has been designed in order to be customized for the different specific use cases. So it includes branding and theming support. You can change the colors, you can put your logo. It came with a graphical interface, so you can do that. It is integrated with multiple identity providers, which includes FIWARE Keylock, but also the Keycloak instance if you are going to use OpenID Connect. If you have a very simple scenario, it is possible to use GitHub just to have simple individual accounts. And of course, which is the important point from the point of view of the FIWARE Dataspace Connector, it is integrated with the FIWARE verifier, and it is possible to use verifier credentials in order to sign into the FIWARE Data Space, into the FIWARE Business API ecosystem generic enabler. It is possible to integrate new identity providers and protocols if you want, because it is using Passport and it is defining an interface to do that. So if you create a Passport strategy, you can integrate it and use whatever identity management system you want. And it is also possible to integrate multiple payment gateways. Right now, we are integrated with PayPal, we are integrated with Stripe, and we are integrated with a particular payment gateway that is used in the DOM project, where they are using this software as the main marketplace. But again, if you need to integrate a different gateway, this is defining an interface that you can implement. And well, this way you will integrate any payment gateway you may need to integrate. Okay, as I mentioned before, the Business API ecosystem generic enabler is intended to work in to create different marketplaces for different monetization scenarios. That means that the idea is that the Business API ecosystem can support the monetization of any kind of digital service. This can be achieved in two different ways. You can do what we have seen in the interactions before, which is delegating on an external procurement system, or you can create what we call a plugin for the Business API ecosystem with a particular code that is needed for the procurement and the instantiation. Basically, a plugin in the BAE defines a type of service specification. For example, you can install a plugin which can be called context blocker query. This way, you will have a service specification that of type service query. Okay, and you can select it when creating a service specification. The idea is that these extensions include all the code that is coupled or specific to the particular service type that you are selling. So, for example, if we are selling queries to a context blocker and our security system is role-based, this is going to include the code that knows how to add the particular role to the particular customer who has purchased this. And this is done because the plugin came with a Python class, okay, that is implementing a plugin class that is defining a set of handlers that are called during the life cycle of the different services. So you may have as a handle that is called when service is created, a handle that is called when service is added to a product, a handle that is called when the product is added to an offer, and the most important one, the one that is called when the offer is purchased. So you have this code, and you are able to do whatever custom behavior, whatever custom validation, whatever custom procurement you need for your particular service type during the management of the life cycle of your services. The plugins are basically zip files. We need to include, first of all, a JSON file with the plugin configuration, which is the package.json. This you have an example here. And basically, what the information that you are going to provide is the name of the service specification type you are defining, the module, which will be a Python path to the class that is implementing the plugin class, the types that you load, whether this is going to be URL, whether you are going to upload, allow to upload a file, etc. And then the form information, which is where you define what metadata the particular provider that is registering a service for this need to provide. This is automatically picked in the graphical interface, and you will see a form showing all these fields. So in the example of a context blocker with role-based access, well, you are going to have one metadata field, for example, which is how is the role called, for example, or which is the URL of the context blocker, and this kind of stuff. All this information, which is presented in the form, when this is submitted to the TM Forum API, is no other thing than just characteristics of the service specification. But instead of making you know what characteristics are needed. Well, these characteristics that are mandatory are automatically rendered as a particular form, so we can provide all the information that you need. Okay, well, I'm not going to go very deep with this because the business API ecosystem supports multiple price plans, but it is just that the business API ecosystem is supporting the price model that we have already discussed. So with the interface of the price of the business API ecosystem, you are able to create the different price components, and you are able to create the different price plans, and you are able to link the different price plans to the different product offerings. We are providing the interface to do that. Okay. As I was mentioning, the business API ecosystem is using the TM Forum API. So basically, we have this architecture made of 3 different components. We have the BAE portal, which is the graphical interface that is used to interact with the system. It's just an Angular web page. Then we have the business ecosystem logic proxy, which is the component that is situated in the middle, and is the component that is orchestrating the access to the different APIs. So, for example, if you want to buy something, the business ecosystem logic proxy is the component that is going to validate that everything is okay, is going to redirect your request to the product order API, and this kind of stuff. So this component is orchestrating all the different requests to all the different APIs. And it is also the component that is doing the access control. So if you are using the API directly, this is going to enforce that you are provided a valid access token. Or if you are using the interface, this is the component that is going to be linked to whatever identity provider you have in order to perform the OpenID Connect protocol or to call the verifier in order to verify the credentials, and all this kind of stuff is going to be done directly by the business API ecosystem logic proxy. And then we have another component, which is the business ecosystem charging backend. This component is the one that is making the billing and the payment. This component is listening to the different product orders that are triggered in this system, and is the one that is going to download the price plan, calculate the amount you need to pay, call the payment system, give back the redirection URL if needed, instantiate the stuff in the different inventories when the payment confirmation is received, etc. All that process, or that billing process, is executed by this business ecosystem charging backend. Okay, finally, as I mentioned before, we are not using the 100 APIs that we have. We are just using a subset of them, and these are the APIs the business API ecosystem is actually integrated with. For the lifecycle of the product, we are integrated with the product, service, and resource catalog management API. For the orders, we are integrated with the product ordering management API. And also, we are integrated with the different inventories, the product, service, and resource inventory. For user management, this is integrated with the party management API and the account management API, as well as customer bill management API. And finally, this is integrated with the usage management API in order to support pay-per-use models. As we have discussed, one of the simple models that can be part of a product price component is pay-per-use. If you have something that is pay-per-use, you need usage information in order to be able to calculate the amount to be paid. And this is what the usage management API is doing. It's offering an API to the providers so they can submit the accounting information or the actual usage the different customer has made of these services. So the charging backend is able to calculate the amount to be paid during every recurring period. Okay, so now that we have seen what is the TM Forum API and what is the BAE, that is a software created on top of them, we can go and see how all this stuff is integrated within the FIWARE Data Space Connector. And as you can see, as you will see, this is a very simple integration, okay? The integration point is the TM Forum APIs. So from the point of view of a FIWARE Data Space Connector instance, you can or you cannot use the BAE. This is something that you decide if you want to use it. The mandatory point, if you want to have marketplace and monetization in the provider, in the FIWARE Dataspace Connector are the TM4 APIs that are deployed as part of the FIWARE Dataspace Connector. And then there is another service, which is the contract management component, which is the one that is integrated with the TM Forum and the authentication layer of the Dataspace Connector. And this is the component I mentioned before that is performing the role of the procurement service. So how this is working? Well, the providers are going to create the different product specification, the different product offers in the TM Forum API of the Dataspace Connector. The contract management component is going to be subscribed to product orders. Then the customers are going to create product orders for acquiring the access to this stuff. And the contract management, which is receiving the product order notifications, is going to activate the service. So just to give you more detail, what is happening is that when you create the product specification, you need to use a particular characteristic of the product specification in order to define which is going to be the access control that is going to be applied to the customer. And for that, there are two different characteristics, which are the credential and the policy configuration. In the credential configuration, if you remember what was discussed yesterday, if you want to be able to log in the verifier of a particular Dataspace connector using a particular verified credential type, you as a customer or as a consumer organization need to be a trusted issuer of that particular verified credential in the provider connector. If you are not a trusted issuer, when you try to get an access token from the verifier is not going to give you an access token. It's going to say that you are not authorized to provide that particular credential type. This is what is put as part of the credential configuration. If we have a service that needs, for example, a context blocker that is secure with an operator credential, for example, we need to say, hey, this service I'm offering requires an operator credential to work. And this is what is put in the credential configuration. Then the policy configuration, I think, is easy to understand. Here we are going to put the policies that need to be created so the customer has real access to whatever service we are offering here. For example, in this context blocker example, if we are selling just air quality data, we are creating a policy saying, hey, in order to make a GET request to the air quality data, you need to provide me a operator credential, or this organization needs to provide an operator credential with this particular role or whatever. That is put in the policy configuration. So what happens when a customer creates a product order and the product order is processed? The contract management component is going to activate the service doing two things. It's going to pick the credential configuration and is going to add the customer to the trusted issuer list. So now that customer organization is a trusted issuer of the particular type of credential we have specified here. And then it's going to create the policies in the API6, in the PAP proxy, with taking the policies from here. So after the contract management has worked, the customer is a trusted issuer of the type of credential, and also the policy that requires this type of credentials have been created. So from this point on, the customer is able to really access the service that is secure within this FIWARE Dataspace Connector. Okay, as you can see, all this stuff has been performed using the TM Forum API only. So this can be done directly with the TM Forum APIs, or if you deploy a BAE as part of the Dataspace Connector, you can use the interface of the BAE, and it will be the BAE the one creating stuff here, but the process is going to be the same. So you may or may not deploy a BAE on top of these TM Forum APIs. And then there is another possibility. What we have seen is what happens if the marketplace is directly managed as part of the provider connector. But there is another possibility for data spaces, which is having a data space connector, which is a central marketplace or a global instance to the whole data space. In this case, basically what we are going to have is we are going to have another participant of the data space, which will be the marketplace itself, and it deploys a whole connector, okay, with the TM Forum API, its own verifier, its own TM Forum API, and its own contract management component. Okay, and that will be the marketplace. Then the first step in order to use this central marketplace is that the provider needs to prepare the integration. So in order to do that, the provider needs to register the marketplace as a trusted issuer of marketplace credentials. So the marketplace will be able to make requests to the provider connector. Then it needs to create the proper policies, allowing the marketplace to send orders to the provider connector. And finally, the provider needs to register itself in the central marketplace because a party object is needed here in order to be able to create stuff. After this preparation, which is typically in these scenarios is typically done during the onboarding process, the provider is able to create a product offering directly into the marketplace. Okay, so they create the product offering, and this is something that is done directly in the marketplace. When this is done, the customer is going to buy the product order. The customer is going to buy the product order in the marketplace. And since this has a contract management component, which is subscribed to the TM Forum, the notification that a new product order has been created is received by this contract management. The point now is that the contract management knows that this stuff is working on a central marketplace manner. So what is going to happen? The contract management is going to send a direct notification to the provider contract management. So it's going to be authenticated here, it's going to be authenticated here using the marketplace credential, and it's going to make this request an authenticated request through the PEP. So the contract management is going to receive this notification. When the provider contract management receives this notification, the contract management is able to activate the service. So it's going to happen the same as in the previous case. This component here is going to add the customer to the trusted issuer list, and is going to create the policies from the order in their own ecosystem. So the outcome of this process is the same as in the previous case. The customer now is able to access the services offered by the provider Dataspace Connector. Okay, this is everything regarding the different slides. Okay, yes, if you have any question, this is a good moment.
Hi, sorry, I have one.
Yep.
If I may. It's more like envision about all those services. How granular do you think those services will be? I mean, do you expect this to be like huge interfaces with multiple sub-services inside based to the subscription, or like more smaller independent services, and then the end user would create its cocktail of bundles?
That highly depends on the use case, and both possibilities are supported. In the sense, take into account that at the end of the day, the particular configuration of the procurement, which is this, if you are working with the FIWARE Dataspace Connector, is this policy and credential configuration, depends on your design. That depends totally on the use case. If you want the customer to buy a big service made of multiple services, then you may add all the needed policies that are needed to all the different services directly to the configuration. So when you buy, they buy everything at the same time. But the opposite is also possible. I mean, you may create small offers for the different services, each one with their policies and their configuration, and then the customers are going to buy one by one. But both things are correct and depend on the use case.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I have a question. In the last slide, in the central marketplace,
Mhm.
consumers wouldn't need to have a connector, right?
No.
Okay, that's what.
In
I
any
wanted to
case,
know.
in tomorrow's session, no, tomorrow, on Thursday's session, there is a dedicated slot for the central marketplace feature.
Okay, so consumers just log in and
Yeah.
acquire product offerings.
I just introduced the topic. It will be
Okay, thanks.
in FIWARE Dataspace Connector in general. If you are using FIWARE, I don't know how to call it, FIWARE protocol, let's say, consumers don't need a connector.
Okay,
But the request is always made directly to the provider system. You need a connector if you use the DSP protocol, but if you use typical access, you don't need a connector. Consumers don't need a connector.
okay, I would only have to use the web page, right? I mean, the domain marketplace through the.
For access, for consuming, for buying the services yet, and even for consuming the services, you don't need a connector. You can download or you can access the context broker directly. The only thing that you will need as a consumer is an issuer. I mean, you need to be able to get verified credentials.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is where maybe something that the consumer deploy or maybe offered as a service by the data space in general.
Okay, understand. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Okay, do you see my screen, right? Let's start. In the presentation, we have covered a couple of things regarding what are the TM Forum APIs, what is the BAE, and how the TM Forum APIs are integrated within the FIWARE Dataspace Connector in order to be able to offer different services. What we are going to see now are how we can use this TM Forum and these marketplace features in order to really create the stuff and really buy the different things. And we are going to do this in two separate demos. First of all, the command line one, let's say. So first of all, I'm going to show how this process works if you interact directly with the TM Forum APIs, no marketplace deployed. And then in a second step, I'm going to show you how this is possible to be done if you use the BAE and you use the graphical interface. So for this demo right now, I have a data space running in my local environment with two connectors. Well, not with one connector for the provider and an issuer for the customer. And what we are going to do is to, use the TM Forum APIs of the provider connector in order to publish a particular data offer. In this case, will be air quality data that is running in a local context broker. So the consumer is able to acquire it and use it. So as a prerequisite, I have this stuff running. I have the two things running. And the only thing that is missing is adding the consumer to the provider trusted issuer list. Why I need to add the consumer to the trusted issuer list if the customer has not yet purchased anything? Because in these scenarios, we will work with two different types of credentials. On the one hand, we have what we can call administration layer credentials, which are the one that the people with the proper roles in the consumer organization need to have in order to interact with the TM Forum APIs and in order to interact with the marketplace features. Of course, if they need to interact with the marketplace, this is something that needs to happen before anything can be purchased, because otherwise they are not going to be able even to query which is the list of offers that we have. So in this case, we are going to work with two different types of credentials. One that we are going to call user credentials, which are these, let's say, administration credentials. And then we are going to work with operator credentials, which are going to be the ones that are needed in order to access to the particular data service. So the first thing I need to do, as I mentioned, is this pull request, where you can see I'm making a post request to the trusted issuer list of the provider, and I am basically registering the consumer DID as a trusted issuer of credentials of type user credential. Okay. Now we can start creating things. As we are in a API-only marketplace or an API-only access, we need to create a couple of access policies so the different customers can be able to discover the offers, to create product orders, to register themselves as parties. There are a couple of things that need to be done by the customer. So we need to be able to ensure that the customer is able to do these kind of things. So the first thing that we are going to do is to allow that every authenticated participant of the data space is able to read offers. So if you remember what you saw yesterday regarding ODRL policies, what I'm going to do is to create a policy with a post request to our OPA endpoint. And if you have a look at the policy, you will see that, okay, this is a policy. The target will be a TM forum resource equal product offerings. So the target is product offerings in the TM forum API. And the assignee is anyone with a verified credential. So this policy means anyone who is a valid participant of the data space is able to read product offerings from my data space connector. So I'm going to make this request in order to create this policy. Okay, you see the policy has been created. Here we have the Rego translation. Probably you see this yesterday. Okay, now the product order entity, as we have seen as part of the TM forum, has a related party attribute. That means that we need to have a proper party registered in this instance of the TM forum API in order to do anything with it. In this regard, we need to allow the different participants to register themselves as customers. But we don't want to allow anyone to do this. Instead, we want that only LIAR users of the authentication organization are able to register themselves as customers. So we are going to create a policy that allows to do that. If we review this policy, you will see that now the target are TM forum resources of type organization, so organization in the TM forum, and that the assignee of the policy will be users who has the role LIAR inside a credential of type user credential. So, and we are allowing the create action. This means that we are enabling any trusted issuer of user credentials. This is why we have make the trusted issuer request at the beginning. Any trusted issuer of user credentials with the role LIAR is able to register their organization in our marketplace. So this is the policy I'm going to create now. Okay, now the policy is created. And finally, these LIARs need to be able to create product orders, because if they are not able to create product order, they cannot purchase offers. So we are going to create a final policy where we say, hey, the target now is the TM forum resource of type product order, so product orders in the TM forum API, and the assignee is the same. The assignee is anyone who has a credential of type user credential, and inside of it, it has the role LIAR. Again, this is create. So any trusted issuer of user credentials who has the role LIAR is able to create a product order. We create this policy and we have it. Okay, now our system, this is an initial step that needs to be done during the setup of the data space connector, because, well, now this is created and now this can operate. Okay, now we can start with the marketplace interaction themselves. The first thing that we need to do is to create a product specification for our product. I'm not going to use resource specification nor service specifications, because for this type of access management and this type of activation, it is not actually needed, because we work just with the product specification configuration, and I don't want this to be too complex right now. So I'm just going to create a product specification with one important point. The product specification needs to include the two characteristics we have been discussed before. The one for the credential configuration and the one for the policy configuration. So we have, you see, this is a product specification. Now I'm making a request as a provider. Here we have the name is this one, we have the version, the brand, and then we have the product spec characteristic, which the first one is of type credential configuration. You see? And as value of this, we have the credential configuration, which, if you remember from yesterday, this is exactly the same object you use when you are interacting with the trusted issuer list in the local, the data space connector. So what we are saying here is, okay, the credential type is going to be operator credential, and we are filter the claim. So only the role in the target of our provider, they need to include the role operator as part of the credential. So basically, it means that whoever we will purchase will be a trusted issuer of operator credentials in this component, but the verifier is only going to accept those operator credentials which include the role operator inside. If it does not include the role operator inside, the verifier is not going to allow this credential and is not going to generate an access token for it. Okay, so well, we have this credential configuration, and then we have the policy configuration, where in the policy configuration, if you see the value, we have a whole ODRL policy, where we are basically saying, hey, we are going to access entities of type K8S cluster, and the assignee will be whoever has an operator credential with the role operator, and we are allowed them to read. So basically, we are going to sell a set of entity types of type KHS cluster in our context broker, and in order to access to them, they need to provide an operator credential with a role operator. So you can see that with this policy plus this this credential configuration, it is possible to access to the specific data. Okay, so let's create this product specification. Okay, now we have a product specification ID. And now we have to create the offering. In this case, this is something that we are processing in command line. I'm not going to add a pricing or something like that. Just add the minimum information, which is the link to the product specification. We don't need anything extra. So we are going to create a product offering, a free product offering, linking to the product specification. And this is something, and this is what I'm doing right now. Okay, so now we have our offer published, and now the customer is able to access here. So first of all, if I am the customer and I want to interact with this, I need to get an access token from the provider data space connector. And in order to do that, I have two scripts that are doing the job. Probably yesterday you saw how to get the credential from the keycloak and how to exchange the credential for an access token from the verifier. So I'm not going to lose time on this. I'm just going to copy this. So now I got my user credential. And now I'm going to get an access token. Okay, now I have my access token inside this variable. So the first thing as a customer I need to do in this marketplace is to register myself as an organization. So I'm going to try to do that. You can see that I am making a post request to the organization endpoint. I am using the external endpoint, the one that is secure with the PEP proxy. So I need to provide my access token as part of the request. And what I'm doing is just registering my name and providing as part of the party characteristic my DID, because this is the way the contract management component knows which is the organization that needs to be authorized. So I need to provide my DID as part of the registration. And now I'm going to try to make this request to see what happens. Oh, you see, this has failed. Why I have not been able to make this request? If we came here to the user credential, we can copy and if we go to JSON-token.io, we can decode this and see the problem. This user is not a liar. So since the user is not a liar, they cannot register the organization. So in order to solve this, we need to make this user to be a liar. So I'm going to get the administration token for this particular instance. And I'm going to access to the administration console, which is here. If you come in, okay, as you can see, this is the issuer of the consumer, where the users of the consumer are actually managed. So if I came to the users that we have here, I'm trying to use this user, and you see this user is not a liar. So I can assign the liar role. And now, if we get the user credential again, and we have a look at this credential, you will see that now it is the user is a liar. So if I exchange this credential for an access token and try to make this request again, it works. Okay, so now I have an organization ID in this particular marketplace. So now I am able to do a couple of things. The first thing I can do is, for example, list the offerings that we have in this catalog. So I can make a GET request to the product offering and say, see that we have an offer here, which is this one that is linked to this particular product specification. So we are able to list the list of offers that we have in this instance. So, okay, we are trying to secure KHS entity types. So with this consumer organization, I have not purchased anything yet. I have just interacted with the catalog in order to get the stuff. What happens if I try to make the query directly? Okay, I can get an operator credential, which is the one that is needed. And now I'm going to try to get an access token. And you see that I don't even got an access token. It's not that I have not been authorized to make the query. I am not being able even to get the access token. Why? Because this organization is not yet a trusted issuer of operator credentials, which are the one needed for making this request. So let's try to change that. First of all, we have to create, as customers, we need to create a product order. So you can see how the product order looks like. I have to put my ID, my organization ID as related party of the product order. And then in the product order item, I have to put the ID of the offer I want to buy. And, well, I have to provide my access token. So if I made this request, we can create a product order. Okay, we have a product order ID. Then we, as providers, need to process this stuff. We will need to be doing things, creating things, instantiating stuff, or whatever it is needed. We don't care. But the point is that we need to complete the offer. So for that, I'm making a patch, and I'm changing the lifecycle status of the offer to the completed state. Okay, now a couple of things need to have happened. First of all, if we review our policies, we see that here we have the self-registration we have created, the offering that we have created. Here we have the order one, etc. But we have one whose ID, you see, is exactly the ID of a product order. This policy has been automatically created by the contract management system with the product order host place. So this is the policy that is part of the product specification we have created before, the one that we have just purchased, and it has been automatically created. So now we have a policy that allows anyone with an operator credential to make an operator credential and an operator role to make a GET request to this particular entity type. And then, if we review our trusted issuer list, you will see that now the consumer organization is not only a trusted issuer of user credentials, but now it is also a trusted issuer of operator credentials, only when the operator credential includes the operator role in the context of our provider organization. So if now we made exactly the same request that we have done before, I got an operator credential, and then I got an operator access token, now the verifier generates an access token for me. That means that I am able to make the query directly to the context blocker. So you can see that now, well, it is returning an empty list because there are no entities, but you see that now the request went through. Okay, so we have published this data set of these NGSI attributes, these NGSI entities, in our connector. We have made them available through our APIs working as a marketplace, and placing a product order. The system automatically has created anything that is needed, so the customer has real access to the data that has been acquired. Okay, this is what you will do if you use just the TM Forum APIs. But probably it could be interesting having a graphical interface so you can discover the stuff and purchase the stuff in a little bit more fancy way. So now we are going to see exactly this. I'm going to share the other screen. Okay. In this screen, you are seeing two different things. On the one hand, you are seeing a marketplace instance. This is a buy that is deployed as part of a FIWARE Dataspace Connector. And here, in this part, you have my mobile phone, where I have my wallet, because now I need to make some interactive requests in order to send my credentials, which are actually stored in this wallet here. So first of all, let's present the scenario that we are going to follow. Okay. Okay. Here you have a terminal. I want to show you how the data space connector we are using is looking. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to do a port forward of the trusted issuer list that we have in this data space connector, so you can see how this looks like. So if I make a GET request here, Okay. You see that this consumer organization, which is the one that we are going to use in order to buy the stuff, is actually a trusted issuer of two different types of things. It's a trusted issuer of legal person credential, which in this case, legal person credential is this administration credential that is needed in order to interact with the marketplace, the TM4 API, etc. This is needed so they can log in into the marketplace. And then, well, they are also a trusted issuer of a membership credential, which is something that is used in order to check whether this organization belongs or don't belong to this particular data space. Okay. This is from the point of view of trusted issuer list. And then if we make a port forward of our policy service, you will see that we have here a couple of policies. One is for our project, which is not related with this, and the other project and the other policy is the one that has been created for the contract management component in order to be able to support the global marketplace feature you are going to see tomorrow on Thursday. But none of these policies actually allow to add to the data that we want to show. In this case, we are showing, we are going to offer air quality data. Okay, so let's see if I am able to access to the air quality data. And in order to do that, I'm going to try to get a credential. In this case, I'm trying to get a credential as an operator. I have to put the password, sorry. Okay, and now I'm going to try to get an access token. I need to load my DID. And now I'm trying to get an access token. And it didn't work because I am not a trusted issuer of the operator credentials that are needed to access here. Okay, we have just seen until this point command line try or request to these services. But the FIWARE Dataspace Connector has one interesting feature, which is the verifier that is part of the FIWARE Dataspace Connector is implementing OpenID Connect for verifier presentation, meaning that is basically using OpenID Connect. That means that you can use the FIWARE Dataspace Connector in order to offer or control the access, not only to backend services like the context broker, but to actual graphical interfaces. So, for example, this is the query. What I'm trying to do here is making a query to get air quality data. But what if I have a dashboard that is able to display this air quality data? Well, this is something I have here. Okay, this is a dashboard for displaying air quality data. It says that I need to be logging here in order to be able to see this data. So if I click here, I am redirected to this. And if I try to authenticate myself, this is asking me for an operator credential. And if you see my wallet, you will see, oops, something went wrong. The verifier rejected the response. This is for exactly the same reason we have seen in the API. I am not a trusted issuer of operator credential, so I am not able to make the request to get the data directly with the context blocker. But since this dashboard also requires you to share with it an operator credential, I am not able to sign in into the graphical interface. So the product we are going to create in the marketplace is a combined product. It will sell at the same time the query to the backend in order to get the data and the usage of the dashboard that is able to display that data in a graphical interface. So I'm closing this, and now we can start with the process. Okay, I'm closing here. Okay, so first of all, I'm trying to access to the system. You can see here we have this. It is possible to browse the different services. There are right now 2 services published, and we are going to create a new one. So I'm going to log in And if you see the, remove this. So if you see my wallet, I'm going to authenticate online. I'm going to scan the QR code, and this is asking me for a legal person credential. I have two because I'm using one wallet for the two identities, but I'm sharing just the provider one. This is asking me for a PIN. Okay, I have successfully shared my legal person credential with the marketplace. So now I am logged in, as you can see, this is the ID, as the producer of this organization. So if we want to create now our product specification and our product offering, we can go to the My Offering section. Here you can create catalogs in case you want to create catalogs. And here you can create service specification, resource specifications, you see? So you can add the different characteristics. Okay, so you can add stuff like this. Here we have a service specification, which is the air quality service, which has the entity type air quality observed format. You see, we are using the characteristics of the service to put any information that is relevant or may be relevant during the procurement phase. But well, for this example, I'm not going to use services and resources. I'm just going to come to the product specification. Here we have two, which are the ones that are already published. And now I'm creating a new product specification that we can call, for example, I don't know, RM. The brand is SEAMWARE. Here we have the possibility of making the product compatible with the DSP protocol in order to be able to use the data space protocol, catalog protocol, and contract negotiation protocol. But I'm not using this today. This, I think, is going to be shown also on Thursday. So this is the description. Okay, this allows you to provide a description, which is actually Markdown, so you can play with the description of what you saw, because this is later on displayed on the details of the offer. So if you want to describe your product in a nicely way, you can play a little bit with this. Then you have a compliance profile, which is irrelevant in this scenario, but basically this allows you to upload certification. If you have if this product has an ISO or something like that, you can upload it here. So your product is certified. Let's say this is a feature that is mostly used in DOM, because DOM project actually validates before publishing that you have certain level of compliance. You can ignore this. Here in the characteristics is where you are going to put configuration options, as we have seen before. This is where you put the X size, the storage, or whatever. All these configuration options that had a direct impact in the pricing are created in this step, but don't need them right now. And then we have this step here, which is called data space configuration. Here is where we are going to add our policy configuration and our credential configuration. At the end of the day, in the database, okay, those things are going to be stored as characteristics of the product that we have seen in the command line example. But for simplicity, we separate this here because having everything merged in the characteristic is a little bit complicated. So we have two types of things that we can upload: credential configuration and authorization policy. So let's start with the credential configuration, which I'm going to copy paste. Okay. I put it here directly in JSON. You see, this is the credential type operator credential and the path. This producer with this allowed value is the same as we have put before in command line. In this case, this is credential config. Okay, now we can save this, and now we can save this configuration. And we also need to put an authorization policy, which in this case is the one that we have here. Okay, and you can see here that we have a policy that allows that has as a target the entity types of type air quality observed, and that has, and the ones that access in their quality observer will be users who has the role, who has a credential of type operator credential, and they are able to read these entities. Okay, so we can add this. This is the config. Okay, so we can save this characteristic. Now we are able to select resources, we are able to select services. In this section, we are able to upload a product image, which is the one that is displayed in the catalog, so you can make it a little bit nicer, and you can upload any number of attachments that you want. This typically is used to upload documentation, to upload the screenshots, or these kind of things, to make the offer looks better in the catalog of the application. And there is a final step that allows you to define relationship between products. I'm not going on too deep to this. So here we have the summary, and we are able to create our product specification. And we have it here, but we have it in active status. To be able to discover this and to show this into the catalog, we need to change the status to launch. So we can update our product. Finally, we need to create an offer. We need to add the terms and conditions, the pricing, and all this kind of stuff. So in order to do that, we have to create a product offer. This is our Air demo. This is the short description that is shown in the widget. And the thing that we have to do is to select our product specification here, our catalog, the list of categories, in this case, none is defined, the license, the terms and conditions that need to be accepted by the different customers. And then you have the possibility of creating price plan. You have, this may be free by default, but you can make this as complex as you want. You can create this, and then you can add different price components, which, as you remember, they may be one time, recurring, prepaid. So you may combine different price plans and different price components in order to create pricing as complex as you want. In this case, because this is a demo environment and we don't have a payment gateway linked, I will just leave it as free. And then we have a final thing, which is the procurement mode, which defines how the buy marketplace, this is a buy marketplace feature, not a TM Forum one, how the buy marketplace is going to deal with the procurement and the activation. And this is also quite related with this plugin stuff I mentioned you before. There are three types of procurement: manual, payment automatic with manual procurement, or fully automatic. If we choose manual, the system is going to assume the provider itself will be dealing with the payment management and the procurement management, so the buyer is not going to do anything. It's just going to place the product order when this is purchased, and it will forget about it. It will allow to interact with the product order from the interface, so the provider can change the lifecycle status manually, just as a way of making the provider life easier. The second method, which is the payment automatic with manual procurement, is the most used in other projects, for example, in DOM, where basically what we are saying is, okay, this has a pricing plan. We have a gateway. We have a payment gateway. So when someone buys this offer, we are going to deal with the payment. We are going to calculate the amount to be paid. We are going to do the billing. We are going to generate an invoice. We are going to call the payment system, but we are not going to do anything with the procurement. The procurement is something the provider needs to get a notification, and they need to change the lifecycle status and create stuff in the inventories, etc., like the contract management component is doing. And there is a final one, which is the automatic method, which is interacting with the billing and the payment system, and it is also performing the activation of the services. But in order to do that, you need to have the marketplace need to know how to activate the services internally. And this is typically done with these plugins I mentioned before. If you have plugins that are able to make the activation, you can select the automatic method for the offer, and then the buyer is going to do everything for you. In this particular case, we are setting this as manual for two reasons. First, because we don't have a payment gateway to call. And second, because we are using the contract manager component of the data space connector, which is an external service for the BAE. So for the BAE, this is an external service. Even if we had, in this scenario, a payment system, we will choose this one, the payment automatic with manual procurement, because for the BAE, the contract manager component is the provider component. So it's external to the system. Anyway, I'm selecting manual, and we can finish our product offer creation. We have it here, and I'm just changing the status to launched, so it is displayed in the catalog. So we can here, and with our services, we have our air demo thing, and we can see the details. Here we have the long description I mentioned before. Here we have the policy configuration, the pricing, this is free, and there is no compliance, etc. Okay, and this is published in the demo catalog. So here you have all the information that you need. So what I'm going to do now is to sign out. And now I'm going to sign in. One second. Okay. So I'm going to log in here, and I'm going to authenticate myself. But in this case, I'm going to use the other credential, which is the credential belonging to the consumer organization. So I'm sharing this credential. And now, if you see, we are the consumer organization. So we are able to search for services. Okay, we want to access to this particular service. We love it, so we can buy it. We add to the cart. In this view is where you typically are going to select the different configuration options, the different price plans, and all this stuff. Since we have not created that, the only thing I need to do is to accept the terms and conditions we put to the offer, and this offer is free, so we can add it to the shopping cart. And we can proceed to purchase. Here is my information. Here is the billing address I am selecting, and here is the offer I am buying. So we proceed to check out this. And this has created a product order. You see, this has created a product order similar to the first request of product order we have made directly in the TM Forum API. But you see that the status is unchecked. Why? Because this is a manual offer. This is a manual procurement order. So this needs to be manually managed by the provider. So what I'm going to do is to sign out here as provider. Now, okay, so now as a provider, I can go to the product order section and see the one that I have received. And here is the one that we have just created. So I can deal with this. I can acknowledge the order. We can start the process. We are doing things. Okay, now this is in progress because we are doing stuff. And now that everything is done, this is completed. And now our thing is ready. So what should have happened if we came here is okay, let's see what happened. First of all, let's review the policies in this particular connector. And you will see that here a new connector has been created. You see? A new policy has been created. This is the policy. If you have a look, entity type, operator, air quality observed. This is the policy that we have put as part of our product specification, the one that allows to make queries in order to read air quality data. But that's not the only thing that should have happened. Okay. If we have a look at our trusted user list in this connector, I'm making this GET request now. You see that now for this consumer organization, the consumer organization is now also a trusted issuer of operator credentials with this restriction. The operators should include an operator role inside. Okay, so now this organization should be able to query our air quality data. Let's see. First of all, I'm getting, again, the access credential for the operator. I need to put the password. Okay, and now I am getting, I'm exporting my DID, so we can use it in the local wallet. And now I'm getting an access token. Okay, it looks good. So now, if I make a query to read air quality observed data with this access token, you see I got the data. I am able to read all this quality observed data. But this is not the only point. If we have a look at the dashboard that we offered before, I am able to log in. I am authenticating myself. And now this is asking for an operator credential. I can share my operator credential. And now we see the data, this air quality observed data that we have before in the map. So we have offered at the same time the data and the application that consumes the data. Okay, any question until this point? There is a final things to review, but it's a different topic. So if you have any question regarding this, please raise your hand.
Hello.
Yep.
Thanks first of all for the presentation. I lost a part, and I would like to ask if I want to register my service to a marketplace, do I need to deploy my own data space connector for that?
Yes. If you want to offer your service, you need a data space connector because you need to manage the access control to your services.
Okay. And then I connect with this aspect, with this connector, I can connect my service to the marketplace.
Yes, you create a product specification in the marketplace.
Yes.
And as part of the configuration of the market of that, you provide the configuration that when a customer buys your product will be automatically created in your connector. In this case, the information that we are putting are two things. The credential configuration, that means what credentials the badgers of your service need to present. In this case, we are using operator credential, but could be anything. And the policies that need to be created in your connector so the customers can access. For example, in this case, this product came with a policy that says we allow GET requests to the air quality observed entities for users with an operator credential with the operator role.
Understood. And the credentials and the policy, they are created in the connector.
Everything is automatically created in the connector. Yes, both the policies and the credential configuration.
Okay.
The credential configuration is added to the trusted issuer list, and the policy is added to the policy enforcement point.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm stop sharing. And okay. There is a final thing that I want to share with you, which is just you have seen this last dashboard application. We have used the one that is showing the data that we are reading from the air quality, and that it is fully integrated with the verifier, right? So the last thing I want to show you is how we can pick an existing application with an existing dashboard and integrate it with FIWARE Dataspace Connector, so it starts using verified credentials for the login and sending the proper access token to get data that is actually secure within a FIWARE Dataspace Connector. Basically, how to integrate this application I have just shown to you with a FIWARE Dataspace Connector. So in order to do that, we have 3 examples: this baseline, this secure, and this busy login, which are 3 implementations, each one more secure than the previous one. So let's start first with the base application, which, if you have a look, it is a very simple application. It's Node.js. And basically, we have here a load entities method, which is taking air quality observed stuff and just making a GET request to this endpoint, making this query to get air quality data. And then it is just sharing this information with the front end. And that's it. There is no authentication, no nothing. So let's start this application. Okay. So since we don't have any kind of authentication, what I'm going to do is just to run a Docker Compose file that is here. That is just a context blocker with its database. So no kind of authentication. This is totally local. Okay. Let's see if this is running. Not yet. Okay, it is starting. Okay, now it's running. You see, I have one entity here. So we will just, you will see that this has very little configuration. Just where is the context broker? This is the only information this needs. So I am just starting the app. And you can see this is a very simple application. It's the first step. We are able to load the data. We are taking this from the context broker, and we have one entity. Okay, this is the baseline. We have an application that has no authentication at all of any type, and it is accessing the context broker air quality data. So, which is the first step in order to secure this stuff? The first step in order to secure this stuff is secure the access to the data itself, which is the context broker that we have in the Dataspace Connector. And this is what we have in this second step. Okay, if we have a look at this application, you will see that it's very similar, but a little bit different. We have our method to load entities. We are making the request to load, to make this query. But in this case, where is this? What? Oh, I have opened the front end, sorry. Okay, and in this case, we have this API defined, we have this method in the backend to get the entities, but you see that now we are requesting an API token. We need to have a token. So we are making the request to the context blocker, but we are passing by the authorization bearer token. The only problem that we have is, okay, you can see this is making an authorized request, but this is not generating the token, okay? This is taking the token from the configuration. So this is not securing the front end yet. This is only securing the access to the context broker. If we want to test this stuff, I'm going to use the same data space connector instance I have in my local environment, but I need to, okay, we have this, and we have this. Okay, we need to ensure the consumer is a trusted issuer of user credentials, which is something that has happened. We can verify that this is true. We can make this and check, okay, yes, our user is a valid trusted issuer for user credentials. And now the point is that we need to have an access policy that allows to query air quality observed data passing by a user credential, which is something that it is not in our policies, if I am correct. We have the self-registration, we have the offering one, we have the one that has been created for KHS stuff, but we don't have this. So the two things that you need to do in order to secure the context blocker in the backend is, okay, I have to add the trusted issuer list, and now I have to add a policy. And this is a policy I'm just going to pick from here. This one. You see, it's just the asset is air quality observed entities, and the assignee is anyone who with a user credential able to read. So I'm creating this policy. Okay. Now I should be able to query the entities. Well, this is not needed. Now I'm getting the user credential, and I'm getting an access token. Okay, so if we get this access token and we put it in our configuration, we are able to run this application, and if we go, oh, why it is not working? Oh, I love the demo effect. Okay, 1 second. Oh, there are no entities. Sorry, my fault. It is working, but there are no entities. Sorry. Okay, I'm creating one. Okay. Okay, now we have the entity. Okay, the first step, we have just our application and our secure context broker. We are just making the query. The second step is securing the context broker. So in order to do that, we deploy the context broker behind a FIWARE Dataspace Connector, and then we have created the trusted issuer list, and we have created a policy that allows certain type of credentials to access here. This demo application is just picking a hard-coded access token in order to access to this, which is, of course, not a good solution because the token is going to expire in a couple of minutes. So in a couple of minutes, this won't be working anymore. But now that our data is actually secure with proper access control issued by the issuer. The only thing that we need to do now is to be able to generate access tokens from our application so everything is working properly. So if we have to the third step that we have here, we can see that this is changing a little bit. This endpoint, the one that we are using in order to query, now instead of taking the access token from a hard-coded environment variable, is taking the access token from the request session. So it is taking the token from the session, it is picking air quality observed stuff, and it is making a query to get this stuff, passing the authorization bidder and the token from the session. This is almost the same. You see, this method is almost the same. The only thing that changed is that before the access token was hard-coded, and now the access token is coming from the session. But how is this token populated in the session? We can see how the OpenID actually works. First of all, we have this endpoint, which is the one called by the login button in the front end, which is the authorization start. This is taking the OpenID configuration from the verifier that is configured. If you have a look at here, you will see that we are configuring the context blocker and we are configuring the URL of the verifier. So since the verifier is exposing the standard, well-known OpenID connect endpoint, this method is able to download the different URLs that need to be needed, both the authorization code and the token endpoints. So we generate our redirectory, which is our host with the callback stuff, and then we put in the session the state, so we know where to go, the nonce, and the information of OpenID Connect and our redirectory. And basically, we redirect the browser to the authorization endpoint. Okay, this redirection to the authorization endpoint is a redirection to the verifier, which is the one that is showing the QR code, as we have seen a couple of times. Then in the QR code, the verifier is going to ask for my credentials. So I'm picking my wallet, I'm scanning the QR code, I'm sending the credential, and the verifier is receiving my credential. When the verifier has verified that everything is correct, it is going to call to my redirectory. And my redirectory is here. So we are getting the callback, and from the request, we are getting the state. We are able to compare the state in order to check that this is actually the request I sent. Then we get the authorization code from the request. This is typical OpenID Connect. And then I change the authorization code, you see, for a token, an access token. So I make the request to this endpoint, passing the passing the authorization code, and that gives me an access token. So finally, I pick the access token and save the access token in the session. And when everything is okay, I redirect again my page to my browser to the login. Okay, to the initial page. So you see that this is actually quite simple to integrate with the verifier. It's typical OpenID Connect. You just redirect the browser to the authorization endpoint, you get an access token, you get an authorization code, and then you exchange the authorization code for an access token, making the typical post request where you put the authorization code in the request and you get the access token. And now we have a proper access token that has been generated from a proper credential, so we are able to make requests to our context blocker service securing the data space connector. So if we want to have a look at this, this is the page we have seen before. You remember, I can click in login, I am redirected here, so I'm authenticating, I'm sharing the operator credential, and now that I have my credential here, I have my access token here, I am able to make request to the content broker through the policy enforcement point. So I got all these air quality data here on the front end. Okay, and that's all from my side. We have some time left, so if you have any question, please raise your hand.
Hi, I have another question.
Yeah.
So you showed the verifier part, but how to issue these credentials? I mean, the ones that you use in the wallet.
That's a very good question. Let me show how. Wait a moment. This phone has been disconnected again. 1 second. Okay. Okay. So the issuer is part of is basically a key cloak, okay, that is configured in order to be able to issue these specific credentials. If marketplace, okay, no, this one. So, for example, let's see the consumer here. You have to access the account page of your Keycloak instance that has been configured to be an issuer, right?
Okay.
In this case, this is a Keycloak. I'm accessing to the consumer realm and I'm accessing to the account endpoint. Here, this is my consumer issuer, and this is local to my organization. So typically, I'm going to have my user and password within my organization. Okay, this is internal to the organization, right? Now, I have to sign in with my internal user and password, for example, this employee. Okay, and this is the typical Keycloak dashboard with one important point. We have this one here, verified credentials. So I'm going to remove this credential, which is the consumer one. Okay. And now I can come here and what credentials I need to issue, which type of credential. We have 3 types of credentials in this environment. We have the membership credential, the user SD, and the operator credential. Well, the user SD is a legal person credential. So I select this one, and this generates a QR code. So I came here, I say, I want a new credential in my wallet. So I scan this, and this is offering me a new legal person credential. So I add this new legal person credential to my wallet, and now I have it here. Now I can use it.
Okay. Understood.
Okay.
Thanks.
From the configuration point of view, this may be a little bit more complex. I don't know if this is something that is going to be shown yesterday, if this was shown yesterday or not. But basically, for example, provider. This is something that is configured as part of Keycloak, okay? This is the Kubernetes configuration that I have in my local environment. And you configure these things here. You pass them as meta information of the realm. So you specify, okay, I'm going to define a user credential, and this is the algorithm I'm going to use to sign the credential. This is the type of credential we are going to issue, and this is how the credential is going to be named, and this is the scope that needs to be used during the OpenID for verified credential issuance process in order to request a credential of this type. Okay. And then, well, you configure associated to that scope all the information that needs to be part of the credential with mappers. So we specify that we are going to put this context, that we are going to put the user email, that we are going to put the first name. So you are able by configuration, by mapping configuration in Keycloak, to define what information from the particular user is going to be added to the credential. Okay?
Okay. And the verifier is the one that you showed, no? The verifier of FIWARE.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the verifier from FIWARE, which is the one that we are offering as part of the FIWARE Data Space Connector, but the verifier from FIWARE is implementing a standard protocol.
Okay. Yeah. I know.
Any component supporting OpenID Connect for verifier presentation will be working.
Okay.
And I can say the same about the issuer. We are using Keycloak because it's very standard and they are properly implementing verified credential issuance. But if for whatever reason there is another software, if the protocol is standard,
It will work.
it will work. Okay. If there is no more questions, we can close and leave it here.
Thank you very much for attending today and have a good day. And thank you, Francisco.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.